Okay, so yesterday, whoever wants to work on this workbook for Pesach, which is questions and answers regarding Pesach, why we do certain things, and it's from the Rebbe's Haggadah. So Rivka's downstairs making more copies. When she'll bring it up, I'll give it out to whoever wants. I have the answers, but she is printing the questions. And as you know, that Pesach, the main thing are the questions, the 4 questions. No, the main thing is the answer. Okay.
What question was?
All right. Rashi goes straight to the answer. So today's our last class. Let's see what we can fit in. So I skipped over a few things before. I'll try to cover whatever we can today, and if there's extra time, I'll go back to the things that I skipped. I'm doing page 71 now. So in the davening, when we say the part that today is Chag HaMatzos, and when it's Sukkot, we say today is Chag HaSukkos, and when it's Shavuos, we say today is Chag HaShavuos. We always add another word which describes the yontif. When it comes to Pesach, we say Zman Cheresein, the time of freedom. Comes to Shavuos, we say Zman Matan Torasein, the time of when the Torah was given. So clearly, the theme of Pesach is without question, is all about remembering that we went out of Mitzrayim and trying to re-experience it and try to picture that we're going through it now. But the truth is, there's also another aspect to Pesach. It's not only about remembering that Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim in the past, but it's a time to strengthen our emunah that Hashem will take us out of this galus in the future. And just a few places where it's referenced to in the Haggadah, the first thing that we do when we sit down to the meal, of course, the first thing we do is Kiddush. But right after Kiddush, after we wash our hands, we dip the karpas in the salt water. Then we start Magid, which is the first. Magid is from the same word as Haggadah, which is now we begin the Haggadah. So how does it start off? It says, this is the bread of affliction that our forefathers ate in Mitzrayim. And then we say, whoever wants can come and join us. And then we say, now we're here. But next year we'll be in Eretz Yisrael. Now we're not free, evident. Next year we'll be Bnei Chor, will be free. That means right at the onset of the Seder, we're basically saying there's 2 aspects to the Seder. One is to thank Hashem for the past, and the other is to basically express our emunah and our trust and belief in Hashem for the future. And of course, that's the beginning of the Seder. What's the last thing at the end of the Seder? You know, there are customs that they have special songs, Chad Gadya and everything else. That's like the additional part of the Seder. But the Seder itself, the basic Seder, ends with everybody saying out loud, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim. Thank you, Rivka, so much. L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, which means that we're expressing, here we're celebrating going out of Mitzrayim, but we're also declaring our total belief in Amunah that next year we'll go out of this building. Okay, so whoever wants, this is the questions, and these are the answers. It says on the answers. You can take the copy. Yeah. So now, this class is going to be based on a pasuk. The pasuk is here in the booklet on page 73, where it says, it's a pasuk in Micha, one of the last prophets. Ki meitzeis chomeretz Mitzrayim arenu neflois. The pasuk the Rebbe spoke about not hundreds of times, but thousands of times. As in the days that you left Mitzrayim, I will show you wonders. The simple meaning of the pasuk is just like you saw wonders when you went out of Mitzrayim, you'll see wonders when you go out of this galus as well. There's also another way of understanding this pasuk deeper, and that is when you went out of Mitzrayim, you saw wonders. When you go out of this galus, you'll see such miracles and such wonders that even compared to the miracles of Mitzrayim, it will be considered wonders. But either way, what we're saying is that this pasuk implies that just like you saw wonders and miracles when out of Mitzrayim, that's how you see wonders and miracles when we go out of this galus. So there's two things here. One is that because of this, Mefarshim draw a parallel of a lot of things that happened when the Yidden went out of Egypt. The same thing will be when they go out of this galus. Similar. On the other hand, we find that in many ways, going out of this galus will be different than when we went out of Mitzrayim. So how do we explain the fact that on one hand it's different, on one hand it's the same? So this goes back to what we started to speak about yesterday. I said it briefly. And again, look at page 71, where we underline number 7, Erisin and Nisuin. Remember we said yesterday that there are two stages in a marriage. One stage is Erisin, where the husband and wife are considered married, but it's not complete, and therefore they can't live yet together as husband and wife. And that's accomplished just by the ring, when the husband, the chassan, puts on the ring and says, Harei. The second part of the marriage is the three things. When they go under the chuppah, they say the Sheva Brachas and the Yichud, and then they're married completely. So yesterday we spoke about how this is an analogy to going out of Mitzrayim and receiving the Torah. There's another medrash that says that we use the same analogy to describe going out of Mitzrayim and going out of this goes with Mashiach. In other words, when we went out of Mitzrayim, and we went to receive the Torah, that was the marriage between Hashem and Bnei Yisrael, but it wasn't complete. That's only the Erison. That was the first stage of the marriage. When Mashiach comes, that will be compared to the Nisuyim, which is the final stage of the marriage. So if you think of this analogy, it'll explain what we just said. Because when we talk about going out of Golus with Mashiach is the marriage, that means that going out of Mashiach is not a separate, totally independent experience. One is going out of Mitzrayim, and now we're again in Golus, we're going out again. It's one process that began when we went out of Mitzrayim, and the culmination of that process is going to be when Mashiach comes. So that means that they're really connected, because one is the culmination of the other. On the other hand, being that when we went out of Mitzrayim, it was not complete, like the marriage, which is not complete. When we go out of Golus, it'll be the culmination and the complete process. If that's the case, obviously there'll be things when we go out of this Golus different than they were when we went out of that Golus. So we go through a few things where we see in different sources, some things where we see that it's going to be the same, and in some ways we see it's going to be different. So the first thing, which is simple, number 2, something you've heard a lot about, is where the Rebbe constantly quotes the Arizal. That the Arizal says that the generation that's going to go out of Golus, the women of that generation, everyone, the women, the people of that generation are going to be a Gilgul, a reincarnation of all the people that went out of Mitzrayim. Here again, you see the similarity. But based on that, the Rebbe says, being that when they went out of Mitzrayim, it was in the merit of the women, B'schus Nashim Tzidkonius, we went out of Mitzrayim. So going out of this Golus is also going to be in the merit of the women. And we had classes on this, that this explains why starting from the previous Rebbe, the previous Rebbe started a new movement where women also study Chassidus. And from there, it just developed more and more, and especially by our Rebbe, women were not only studying Chassidus, they're teaching Chassidus, women are shluchis, and so on and so forth. Why? Because the key to Gula is in the hands of women. So that's something which is similar. Another thing is one of the big events of going out of Mitzrayim was Kriyas Yamsuf, the splitting of the sea. and we're going to have another class about that. Hopefully, we'll cover that. That the splitting of the sea wasn't just a technical thing. We went out of Mitzrayim, the sea blocked us. Hashem split the sea, and now you keep going. Splitting of the sea in itself was part of the spiritual experience, which had to do with leaving Mitzrayim and receiving the Torah. So when Mashiach comes, there'll also be the splitting of the sea. Where do we see this? So if you turn the page to page 74, where it says, Hashem will dry up the gulf of the Egyptian, there's a word missing here probably, sea or river. Hashem will lift his hand over the river. Which river is it? The Euphrates River. And his mighty wind, and he'll smite the river into 7 streams. And then people will cross over in their shoes. So on one hand, it's the same. Just like there was Kriyas Yamsuf when they went out of Egypt, there'll be splitting of the sea when we go out of this Golus. On the other hand, the sea that was split when we went out of Mitzrayim was split in 12 streams. Each Shevet, each tribe went through another stream. When we're going out of this Golus, it'll also be split, but it'll be split in 7 streams. So 12 we know, that's the 12 Shvatim. The 7, we spoke about this earlier, that corresponds to the fact that the Yidden come from 7 great tzaddikim and tzidkonius. Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov is 3. Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah is 4. And that's altogether 7. So, again, this part will go into more detail why the difference. But clearly, here we say they're similar, but yet it's going to be different. Then there's another thing. You look at number 4. It says Nigla, v'nichse, v'cheze, v'nigla. He'll be revealed, he'll be hidden, and he'll once again be revealed. What is that alluding to? So this is page 75. This is a medrash. And the medrash says, on the pasuk in Shir Hashirim, where it's underlined, Deime deidi l'tzvi. Hashem, my beloved, is compared to a tzvi, which means a deer. In what way is it compared? Ma tzvi, just like a deer, you see it, and it's hidden, then you see it again, and it's hidden. I think what that means is if you ever had the experience, someone said, look, there's a deer. I don't see anything. Oh, there it is. Basically, a deer zigzags between the trees. I think that's what happens. So you see it, and then it's hidden between it from a tree, and then you see it running to another spot, so it's again exposed. So that's how, same as with Hashem, specifically with Moshe Rabbeinu. What does that mean? Look where it's underlined. That Moshe Rabbeinu was hidden from the Yidden. In other words, when Moshe Rabbeinu came to the Yidden and told them you're going out of Mitzrayim, after all that, he disappeared. Nowhere to be found. How long will he disappear for? So there's 2 opinions. Rav Tanchuma said he disappeared for 3 months. And where did he go? There's also, he says he went to a place called Kirsin. Another opinion says he disappeared for 6 months. But then it says, and this will also be similar with Mashiach. Nigla lehem, first he'll be revealed to them, and then he'll be hidden from them. How long will he be hidden? So it says 45 days, and brings a pasuk, where it shows that it's 45 days. There's another source to this. If you turn to page 76, this is Rabbeinu Bachaya. It's one of the early commentators who was very famous Pirush on Chumash. And this is in the Parsha of probably Shmos or Vayera, where he writes again, where it's underlined that the look where it says V'chein darshu b'medrash Chassidus. This is what it says in the medrash. Deino the deinu the tzvi, that Hashem, or in this case the Redeemer, will be compared to a deer, just like a deer is seen and then he's hidden, then he's seen again. So too, the first Redeemer first was seen, and then he was hidden, and then he was seen again. And how long? But Tanchuma says 3 months, And Rabbi Yehuda says that he was in a city called Krisin. But then he said, and the same will be with the future Redeemer, be revealed, will be hidden, and be revealed again. And what is it based on? Because it says, look at the last words, that things will happen when Mashiach comes, which is similar to what when they were in Mitzrayim. This one is the same, but it adds another word, page 77. This is a commentary from the Chassam Sofer, one of the greatest authorities of halacha. But this is his commentary on Chumash, and he says the same thing, but then he adds, this was a very big test for the Jews, that the one who was supposed to redeem them was hidden for 6 months. And the same will be with Mashiach. He will be hidden after he'll be revealed, like it says in the Medrash, and Hashem will stand on the side of the tzaddikim and give them support. In other words, try to imagine in Mitzrayim, Moshe Rabbeinu came and said, we're going out of Golus. We know there were people who didn't believe him. Not only they didn't believe him, but they were upset with him because Paro punished them and made life more difficult for them. So they were upset. Imagine after that, this Moshe Rabbeinu created this commotion, this chaos, this appearance. So all those people who didn't believe were, of course, encouraged not to believe. And all those who did believe had a very big test. And that's what he says, that the same test will be when Mashiach comes. Why it's that way? Why does it have to be in such ways revealed and hidden and revealed again? Maybe we'll leave that for later if we'll have extra time. Number 5. So one of the things that happened in Golus Mitzrayim, by the way, about the revealed and hidden revealed, even though I'm showing you different kind of commentaries, but one of the most known is, of course, Rashi. Rashi also brings this. This is, look at the next page, page 78. 78 is from Daniel, Pasuk in Daniel. On the bottom, it says these words, Ashrei amachak Eloi. Praiseworthy is those that wait for him, meaning for Mashiach. Normally, you would think it means those that wait for him to come. But then look at Rashi, if you could read it, it's all the way on the bottom. Is it? No. Oh, it's on the next page. Next page, I put down the Rashi. Fortunate is those who wait for him. So Rashi says 45 years are added to the above number. There's a number there when Mashiach is supposed to come. And then there's 45 years added to that. Why is 45 added? It's for our King Mashiach is destined to be hidden after he's revealed and then be revealed again. And we find this in the Medrash Ruth. And so Rabbi Lezer Kalir established this in the poem that he made in the service of Shabbos Parshat Chodesh. Will be concealed for 6 weeks of years. Basically, we don't do this, but many shuls, when it comes to Parshat Chodesh, which we just had this past Shabbos, they have extra tefillos. One of those tefillos, and this was composed by Rabbi Lezer Akali. He composed a lot of the prayers that we have for Kinnus and other things. So he writes, they'll be hidden for 6 weeks of years, whatever that means. So the numbers don't really matter, because there are different opinions. How many numbers? And anyway, the numbers could change. What matters is that the way it's going to happen is that revealed, hidden, and then revealed again. Okay, so the next thing we're going to go into is on page 82. Page 82 describes what happened when Moshe Rabbeinu came to Mitzrayim and told Paro he want to leave. So what does it say on the pasuk? Vayemer, Paro said, "Nipim atam nip, you guys are lazy, and because you're lazy, that's what you're saying. Let's go sacrifice to God. And now I see that you're lazy, you'll get to work, and you won't be given any straw, and you have to deliver the same quota of bricks." And then we see that the Yidden were very upset. Look at the next page, 82. That when Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron left Paro's palace, they said to Moshe, these are the words that are underlined, God should judge you. You made our a name amongst Paro, abhorrent in the eyes of Paro, in the eyes of his servants. You're putting a sword in their hands to kill us. Basically, we're very upset that because of Moshe Rabbeinu's message going out of Mitzrayim, look what's happening. Moshe turned to Hashem and said, Hashem, why did you do this to me? Why did you send me? Since I went to Paro, things only got worse. So since Moshe went to Paro, things got worse. This too, it says, will be when Mashiach comes. That in some ways we're going to see maybe incredible miracles, but in other ways there'll be things that'll actually get worse. What's the basis for that? What's the reason behind it? The Rebbe often quoted this when he spoke about we're living in the times of Mashiach. There are certain things happen. The Rebbe asked, why did this happen if we're living in the times of Mashiach? And the Rebbe said, there are this parallel. That is still, even though it's negative, it's still part of the process. So the very known answer is the Kli Yakar. In Chumash, one of the famous Mefarshim is Kli Yakar, and he's the one who explains this. I made a copy of it in '83. I'm not going to do it word for word because we don't have all that time. But what he says is, because the words that Hashem said to him was, Ata Sira, now you're going to see what I'm going to do to Paro. Now, meaning now, after things got worse, you're going to see how things are going to get better. And he says this is a pattern which we see Hashem created and sort of incorporated this pattern in the nature of the world. And what is it? And he gives three examples. He gives one example is that sometimes you see a person who's sick, very seriously ill, and then suddenly you see that they're stronger than they were ever before. And shortly after that, they pass away. What does that mean? And he explains that it means that every force in the world, when it feels that it's being threatened to be eliminated, it fights even stronger for its survival. Like the expression we use in English, the last fight for survival. When life in a person feels that it's being threatened, and the neshama feels that, God forbid, the opposite of life is coming to take it away, then the neshama fights stronger for life, and that's why we see all of a sudden that they're stronger. But the time has come, and eventually the opposite overpowers, and it's over. Another example he gives is with darkness and light, that the darkest moment of the night is right before the break of dawn. And that's why we use the term the break of dawn, because it was just so dark and suddenly we see light. And really it should have been different, that it's dark at night, and as it gets closer to the morning, it gets lighter and lighter and lighter. And the last moment should be the lightest. And yet we see, no, that could be before the break of dawn, that's the darkest moment of the night. For the same reason. When darkness feels that it's being overtaken by light, and it's going to be pushed out of the way by the light, then the darkness puts up the biggest fight for its survival. And the third example he gives is with cold and warm, also the same thing. That at night it's cold, and once the sun starts coming up, that's when it gets warmer. But again, the coldest part of the night is right before sunrise. Why? For the same reason. Even though you might say, but cold doesn't have any consciousness, so it could be this is the same like it says in many other places, that everything in the world has a malach that's in charge of it, and that's its shlichus in this world. So there's a malach that its shlichus is to make the world cold. That malach wants to do its job. And when the sun starts shining and the warmth is taking over, then he puts up his big fight for survival. Pare was klipa, and tumah, impurity. And obviously his time has come. You see, we went out of Mitzrayim. So Dafka Moshe Rabbeinu came and said, we're going out. Hashem said the time has come, and let the people of Yidden leave Mitzrayim. As Klippa started to feel that its end is coming, that's when it put up its biggest fight for survival and became actually stronger. In a sense, we see a similar thing with Purim, that really Haman was an ordinary person who was an ordinary person. Then he became an ordinary minister. And in the story of Purim, at a certain point, he was raised and promoted to almost like second to the king. He was very close to the king. And when did that happen? And then not only that, Esther invited him to the meal, which means he felt that he's even getting to be higher. And right before he had the downfall, he was all the way up high, and then he fell down. So the same will be with Mashiach, which means when we see chas v'sholom things that are happening there in the negative, it shouldn't be discouraging. It shouldn't be anything that would put any doubts in my mind whether it's true that we're going out of Mitzrayim now, out of this golus, but this is part of the process of darkness becoming stronger right before light. Another thing which is similar is page 84. One of the questions that are asked about Mitzrayim, and this is related to what we said before, the first thing, is look at these words. This is the words where it says in the Chumash that they sang the Shira. Ozi Ashir, Moshe B'nai Yisrael, Ashira HaZois. Zois is feminine. Zeh is masculine, and Zois is feminine. The word Shira, but mainly the word Zois is feminine. Who sang the song? Moshe Rabbeinu. Let's turn the page. The page is Miriam singing her song. What does it say? Vatan Lohem Miriam. Lohem with a mem at the end is masculine. If it would be feminine, it should have been a nun at the end. So it's strange that for the Shira that Moshe Rabbeinu sang, the Torah uses feminine. For the Shira that Miriam sang, the Torah uses masculine. So the answer that's given is what we said before, that in this aspect of Geula, women were much stronger than the men. Like Rashi says, I underlined the Rashi, that it says that where did she get musical instruments from? Tambourines, the drums. So Rashi says the righteous women of that generation were sure that Hashem would perform miracles for them, and they took drums out of Egypt. They took musical instruments out of Egypt because they were so confident that they're definitely going to see miracles and they'll be rejoicing and dancing and singing. So basically it's brought down that this was the strength of the women. The men sang a song after they saw the miracle of Kriyas Yamsuf, which is amazing. But the women were ready to sing before they even saw the miracle. They were already so confident. And that's what's going to be when Mashiach comes. Because feminine, physically, a man is stronger than a woman. So it means that in this song, the women were stronger than the men. It's hard maybe to relate to it, I'll say it anyway. There's a Maimon Chazal where it says, without seeing the actual words, Asidim the Yisrael leimar shira lefanecha le'osed lovei. Asidim and Yisrael, which in the future the Yidden will sing to you for the miracles of the future. And the Shalah asks, why does it say the word future twice? In the future they'll be singing a song for you, like the Mitzrayim. So this is his answer. That in the future we'll be singing the songs for the future before it even happens, like the women did when they went out of Mitzrayim. Also, another famous medrash is that when when the Yidden was singing the song, the Eibishter said, I don't understand what's going on here. My creation is drowning in the water, and you're singing a song? How could you sing when people are drowning? So the words in Hebrew are, Maise Yodai, my creation, Tuvim B'yam, drowning in the water, V'atem Eimrim Shira. That's a simple meaning. Again, according to this, he said, Hashem's complaint to the Yidden were, now that the Egyptians are being eliminated, now you're singing? Why didn't you sing before with confidence that this is what's going to happen? So basically, it means that the true emunah is that you're so confident that you're already singing, and this is basically what the Rebbe encouraged us. Even when he told us to shout out Masai, the Rebbe made sure that we shouted with a niggin and not Chas Shalom the opposite. I remember the first Shabbos after the Rebbe gave that very strong sikha, do everything you can, I did everything I can, and now I'm putting it in your hands, and everybody was shook up from that sikha. So there was a chassid, Rabbi Gansberg, actually, he was one whose wife was the dual mother. He got up, middle for bringing, which is unusual. Nobody really speaks, but there is for bringing. And he said, we're screaming and we're crying, we want Mashiach. He thought maybe that's what everyone wants to hear from us, that we're calling out. The Rebbe smiled and said, the Rav sitting there next to you, ask him if you're allowed to cry on Shabbos. In other words, the Rebbe wants us to scream, but he wants us to sing. How could you sing when you're talking about how painful Gullus is? And the answer is Gullus is painful, but the singing is from the confidence and the absolute certainty that we know that we're going out of Gullus soon. Another thing which is also a very big subject of Chassidus is a part in Tanya that goes into it, is an interesting thing. On the surface, I wouldn't think that it's such a big deal, but it's a pasuk, and therefore it definitely is a big deal. Look at page 86. It says, "Vayugad b'melech Mitzrayim ki barach ha'am." And they told the king of Egypt that the Yidden ran away. Initially, they said they're going for 3 days, but at the end, they were going for more. They ran away. When you don't go out of Mitzrayim, and by the way, the running out of Mitzrayim is not only a little detail, that's why we eat matzah. The whole point of eating matzah was because we were so rushed when we left Mitzrayim that there was no time for the dough to rise. So obviously, this part and these words, that they ran away, is a very important part of Yetzias Mitzrayim. And what do we see when Mashiach will come? Look at next page 87. This is a pasuk that talks about Mashiach, a pasuk in Yeshayahu. Hiloi b'chipazim tetzeu. You will not live in chaos. You will not go in flight. You won't be rushed and you won't go fast. But Hashem will be walking before you, and you'll be walking out of Galus calmly and peacefully. There's another pasuk where it says that, here it says the negative, you won't be rushing. Another pasuk where it says you're walking out calmly. So why is this such an important thing? So the way the Alter Rebbe explains it in Tanya is as follows. We have brief. That, remember we're saying there are differences. One of the differences, or one of the most central differences between Mitzrayim and going out of this Golus, is that this Golus is coming after 3,300 years of receiving the Torah, and after 2,000 years or more of Golus, with a few Goluses in between. And the first Exodus in Mitzrayim was something which didn't come through that, but it came from Hashem, which means, generally speaking, the difference is that going out of Golus, initially out of Mitzrayim, was not something that we earned. It's not something that we worked on. It's something which Hashem gave us as a gift, like we spoke about in the first class, Nissan, that it's L'mayla Lamata. The second Golus is we're going to reach the time of Mashiach, but that'll be a result of all the Yidden collectively working on Torah, on mitzvahs, on good deeds, on overcoming tests and overcoming challenges and struggles and Mesiras Nefesh of over 3,300 years. So therefore, what we're going to achieve and we're going to reach spiritually after all that, when Mashiach comes, is a result of all the work that we did. So one of the differences between something that comes from Umayla and something that comes through a lot of hard labor and work is that when something comes Umayla, which means it's not me, I didn't work on it, it was just given to me, and to a certain extent, it's not internalized as much. Something which I work on, especially if I work on this a lot, these things become internalized. And it's very deep. And therefore, it's also long-lasting. Something which is not internalized means it didn't really become part of me to the extreme point that it's me and that is one. And therefore, there's a possibility that eventually I lose it. And that's the Alter Rebbe writes this to certain Chassidus in a mimer, that they told the Alter Rebbe they feel inspired for a number of weeks, and then it all disappears. So they're thinking to themselves that they were living in some sort of la la land. They were just imagining, and it wasn't really real, it wasn't true. The Alter Rebbe said, no, it was true. But the reason why you were inspired was because something from Shamayim inspired you. And because you didn't do anything from your part to internalize that, so once the inspiration was over, you go back to where you were before. This is like the muscle of the piece of paper that's flying in the wind. When the wind is blowing, the paper could be going at 30 miles an hour. It could be flying very high, higher than the Empire State Building. But it's only the wind. The moment the wind stops, all that excitement ends and the paper goes back to where it was before. But if it's something which is coming from me inside and I worked over and I transform myself internally, that's permanent. So what is the difference between one and the other? When do we have to run away from an enemy? If a person beats the enemy and he knocks him out unconscious, he's going to run away. Why? He knocked him out unconscious, but I don't know what's going to happen after he wakes up. He might wake up and attack me again. So I have to run. But if the enemy is eliminated completely, I don't have to run anymore. There's nothing to run from. There's nothing left to run from. When they left Mitzrayim, in a sense, in terms of klipa and impurity, it wasn't totally eliminated. Because, like I said before, we didn't do the Aveda of totally getting rid of it because we only accomplished that on a certain superficial level. So therefore, there's something to run from. And that's why physically, the leaving Mitzrayim was also in a way where they had to run away, like an enemy that's still there, but it was just sort of overpowered temporarily. But when Mashiach comes, it's going to be something permanent. And because it's permanent, the pasuk I was looking for before is it says, "V'shuva v'nachas tivasheyu," that when you go out of this galus and you will experience salvation, it'll be v'shuva v'nachas. It'll be with calm and meaning saying there's nothing to run from because the klipa was totally transformed. I know I'm going fast and brief because there's just so much details to this, but any questions? You get the general idea? Okay, one more thing. I want to go into Kriyas Yamsuf. So we mentioned before that in a way it's similar, in a way it's different. But Kriyas Yamsuf is much, much deeper than what appears to be on the surface. One of the big questions about Kriyas Yamsuf is brought out of the Maimorim is, you can turn to page 93. 93 is the famous song of Dayenu, right? What does Dayenu mean? If Hashem would have done this, that would have been enough. How much more so that he also did another thing. And if Hashem would have done these two things, that would have been enough. How much more so that he did three things. Altogether, there are 14 things we're thanking Hashem for. One of them is Kriyas Yamsuf. So I underlined it. Look at the English or the Hebrew. If he had split the sea and not taken us through the sea on dry land, we wouldn't have gone through the sea. Just split it alone, that would have been enough. Thank God, not only did he split the sea, but after splitting it, he had us go through the sea. Now, what in the world would have been the benefit of standing on the other side of the sea? Hashem splits the sea, and the Egyptians come and do what they want to do. The whole point was that we should be able to cross the sea. There's another example to this. I didn't make a copy of it, but I think we had the copy of this before. The long Hoidu Hashem Kitev Kileilam Chazdei. What page was that on? Makal B'Cherim, that's where it was. Thank you. So look over there. Also says the same thing. Look, the last two, the Geyser Yamsuf Gzarim, he who split the sea of reeds into sections, Ki Leilum Chazda, we thank you, Hashem. Then it said, and he brought Yidden through it, thank you, Hashem. Why are they two separate things? It's all one. He split the sea and allowed us to escape. So we see from this that splitting the sea in itself is something which is a very major ruchnizik experience, and it was necessary as part of the whole process of going out of Mitzrayim and receiving the Torah. And that explains why when Mashiach comes, again there'll be the splitting of the sea. And actually, before they even went into Israel, they also had the splitting of the Yarden. So what is this splitting of the sea all about spiritually? So here we have the answer to that on page 88. That's the sheet that we're going to talk about this. And by the way, there's a day on Pesach that's designated specifically to celebrate splitting of the sea. Even though all of Pesach is celebrating everything, But Shvi Shal Pesach, the seventh day of Pesach, is specifically designated for this because that's when that happened. The Yidden went out of Mitzrayim on the 15th day of Nissan, and then they went, and then for many days. Then Paro realized that they're not coming back, so he began to chase after them. First they left 6 days, then Paro chased after them, so he had to travel another 3 days. On the 7th day, they were ready to attack, and that's when Hashem made the miracle of splitting in the sea. So the 7th day of Pesach, we're specifically focusing on splitting of the sea. And that's why there's a custom to be up all night. Because when Hashem split the sea, it was also at the break of dawn. So what is it? So on top of the page 88, you have these 2 terms, Alma Discassia and Alma Disgala. It's a big subject of Chassidus, which means the hidden worlds and the revealed world. From time to time, this comes up in the Maimer, in the Sikha, that there's 2 worlds, hidden worlds and revealed worlds. Which is higher? Generally speaking, we say something revealed, that's better. That's concealed, that's worse. But in this context, it's the opposite. When we say hidden world, it means hidden because it's higher. It's closer to the infinite, more abstract, and therefore it's less accessible. Like we have in davening, if you look at page 89, no, page 90, where we say, Yetzer he forms light, Uberich creates darkness. So of course it's alluding to the 2 worlds of Yetzira and Bria, which is higher. Bria is higher. But in reference to Bria, it says darkness. In reference to the lower world, it says light, Yetzer. So this is like thought and speech. Thought is a hidden world. I don't know what the other person is thinking. Speech is a revealed world. I know what they're saying. But the fact that this is revealed is not because it's higher. On the contrary, because it's more external. Thought is more internal. It's something I'm experiencing within myself. So therefore, it's inaccessible, and that's what we call the darkness. So generally speaking, this means that that's the difference between Yam and Yabasha. That's the difference between the world of water, which is sea, rivers, oceans, and the dry land. The rivers are considered the hidden worlds because there's so much going on there under the water, fish and plants. In fact, there's a quote in the Medrash that says, "What everything there is on dry land is also in the ocean, but it's hidden." But it's not only that it's hidden, that you can't see the fish in the water. It's more than that. Fish get their life from the water. And the fact that they're dependent on the water and that's their source of life is very open. And that's why fish can't live outside of the water. We, like it says in Chumash, that Hashem created man from the earth. We know everything is made up of the Yisod, the element of earth. And of course, trees grow out of the earth. So it means fruits, vegetables grow out of the earth. But all these things are not dependent. They can cut them off and they continue to exist. Birds also come from the earth, but they can fly in the air. They don't even have to have any connection to the earth at all. So basically, the difference between dry land and the ocean is another thing. We that live on the dry land are not openly connected to our source. We are totally separate from the source. But the fish which live in the water, not only that they're hidden, but it means that they're so connected to their source, they can't even exist if they would be disconnected. So basically, the hidden worlds is much higher than the revealed worlds. And there are many levels, because this is relative. In one place, this is the hidden, this is the revealed. In a higher place, this is hidden, this is revealed. So generally speaking, Atzilus, right? That's the highest world. I'm talking to Chassidus level 2, so hopefully everybody knows what we're talking about. Is the hidden world. And in order for the light of Atzilus to shine into the other worlds, Chassidus explains it has to go through tzimtzum. The word for tzimtzum sometimes is used is parsa. Parsa means a curtain. Just like physically, if there's light, and you don't want the light to go into your room because you don't want so much light in your room, you put up a curtain, And it blocks the light, that now the light is not as bright because of the curtain. So therefore, between Atzilus and Bria, there's a curtain. And that curtain is blocking the light. That's why in the Beis HaMikdash, which was the structure of the Beis HaMikdash was similar to the four worlds. The holiest place in the Beis HaMikdash was Kodesh HaKadoshim, which is like Atzilus. What was there between the Kodesh HaKadoshim and the rest of the Beis HaMikdash? A curtain. Because up there's also a curtain, spiritual curtain, that blocks the light of Atzilus. When the Yidden went out of Mitzrayim, it wasn't just a physical, exodus, but it was entering a whole new era. In fact, this was just the beginning. They were going to receive the Torah. And the new era is that from this point on, after the Torah is given, Hashem's presence is going to be revealed in this world like it was never before. So, in order for that to happen, being that there's a curtain that blocks, Hashem had to remove that curtain to allow the light from the higher world, which was never ever revealed down here, that light should be able to shine down here the way it is up there. And that is, just to make it a little bit more visual, you look on page 90, what? Look on page 95. I made a curtain. This curtain was made out of a pen. Look, between Atzilus and Bria, there's a curtain. Kriyas Yamsuf means the water parted. You know why the water parted? Because that curtain, which is Malchus of Atzilus, which blocks the light of Hashem, normally, it doesn't allow it. It filters that light. And it shouldn't come down here openly. As a preparation for Matan Torah, the curtain parted. And when that curtain parted, everything in this world, which comes from that Malchus of Atzilus, which is the rivers and the oceans and the sea, that split. Because up there it split, and the reason why it split was to allow the light of Atzilus to shine into all the worlds. In fact, the Gemara says, not only Yamsuf split, all the water in the world split. Why? Water in another country has nothing to do with the Yidden. The answer is because the source of water up there opened up, so all the water down here, which comes from that source, also opened up. This is brief. What's going to happen when Mashiach comes? If it's already opened up to prepare the world for Matan Torah, what's going to be different when Mashiach comes? The answer is there's another curtain. This curtain is between Atzilus and the other worlds. Then there's another curtain between Keser, which is the infinite light of Hashem, and Atzilus. That was never opened. When Mashiach comes, that curtain is going to open, which means this infinite light of Ein Sof, of a Keser, which was never ever revealed in this world, that will be revealed. And when that is revealed, that's when we'll see these differences in the world that we never saw before. That'll be the reason why we'll see differences. That the Gullus will be eternal, and that the Beis HaMikdash will be eternal, and all the good things will be eternal. There won't be any more negative things happening again, is because there's a light that even when the Torah was given, that light wasn't yet revealed in this world. But before the light could be revealed, the curtains have to part. So that's why before Mashiach comes, once again, we're going to see the sea split, but this time it'll be a result of Malchus above Atzilus opening up, and last time it was the result of Malchus of Atzilus opening up, and that's the difference. In a very, very, very brief way. And I just want to add one more thing, that it says the difference between the Avos and the Imoris. The Avos are in Atzilus, and the Imoris and not the Imoris, Avos, Imoris, and the Shvatim. The Avos and the Imoris, they're from Atzilus. And that's why you need 7 paths to split from above into Atzilus. But the world of Bria is for the Shvatim, and that's why you need 12 paths for the second curtain, or rather the first curtain to open up, to go through 7 paths. Yes, Rivka.
That was exactly my question. Did that connect to the 7 or 12?
I don't like to use my Ruach HaKodesh so early in the day, but I had my choice.
Is that from a mimer or like?
Yeah, mine from the Alter Rebbe from the Kuti Torah. The mime is actually on the pasuk where it says that Hashem will pass his hand over the Euphrates and it'll split into 7 parts. That's the mime that explains what I just said. And of course, every Rebbe of Chabad expanded on this and elaborated on this more and more.
Did the Rebbe have a memory of that?
What?
Did the Rebbe have a-
Definitely, I would have to look, but I would. There's also a minor from the Rebbe Marash, which also begins with one of those psukim, the Hechlim, and it's a very long one, has like many different parts to it, all going into this, and then a lot of Maimar from the Rebbe based on that. So basically, if you would look for something like this, you would look in the Maimar of Pesach, and you would probably find definitely it talks about this subject. The last thing we needed to talk about, but there's no time, so I'll meet you in the dorm during Pesach at Mashiach Sudan. We'll talk about that. But that's just like the 7th day is special and is designated to remember Kriyas Yamsov. The 8th day is a day that's totally dedicated to Mashiach, and the day Mashiach Sudan. And just briefly, the origin of this custom comes from the Baal Shem Tov. Normally, Yom Tov, you only eat 2 meals. Shabbos, you eat 3 meals. Baal Shem Tov on Pesach, on the last day, would eat a 3rd meal, and he would call it Mashiach Sukkah. But nevertheless, this is something which was not so well known. In fact, other Chassidim also eat a 3rd meal because of the Baal Shem Tov. But I remember talking to some of them and said, we never called it Mashiach Sukkah, we called it the Baal Shem Tov Sukkah. But in Chabad, there was a tradition from Rebbe to Rebbe that the Baal Shem Tov referred to this meal as Mashiach Sudan. And then the Rebbe Rashab instituted this idea of drinking 4 cups of wine. Did it one time. The Rebbe requested that this should be publicized as much as possible, that people should eat Mashiach Sudan, should wash with matzah, and they should drink 4 cups of wine. But when they drink the 4 cups of wine, they should have in mind that this is specifically for the purpose of the Gula Mitzvah Shloimeh. So we need a little bit more time to go into it. I'll do that hopefully by the Mashiach Suda at the dorm. I mentioned this morning about the 3 Rebbe's Seder, if anybody wants. This is the room where the Seder would take place. This was the table where they sat.
Do we have Hana during business? Yeah, it's totally an opposite. So, the morning. Last time.
No, but next week it's everybody on their own, not just you. Through this years before, that was the same reaction. So I decided I'll come to the dorm. But I was anyone there, sleeping late at night. They went to sleep late. So I stopped.
Thank you so much.
Very welcome. I hope you'll have a
770.
what?
770?
The Chiddush of Rebbe Rayatz. 2nd floor in 770. Yeah.
מתי זה סוגת משיח?
The Chamesh.
5.
יום השמיני של פסח.
ביום
אחרון של פסח.
האחרון של פסח.
כן.
Why do you always like